Hello and welcome to How Would You Handle That? A series of short conversations that I'm conducting with my dear friend and colleague based in Melbourne, fellow coach Ricky Nowak. I'm glad that she is here with me, and we're glad that you're here with us as we sort of unpack the sorts of challenges that our clients bring to us and ask the other person, how would you handle that? Ricky, have you got one for me today?
I do. I'd love to talk to you about a successful legal client of mine who's built a great business employing over 65 lawyers in the Melbourne Central Business District. You see, after 15 years as an M&A expert, he stopped practicing law and became the rainmaker for the firm. And I tell you this background because you've got to understand that he's shifted from being a technical expert to being the rainmaker because he's loving now the connections with clients. That means prior to COVID, he took them for lunch, he called in on them, he brought people to events, and he got them together creating terrific relationships and, of course, deals. However, since COVID has killed the office and killed the commute, he realises that only 20% of his staff want to come back to the work, and therefore it's going to be harder to bring work back in the door because part of that work ethic was meeting people. He wants now to encourage his staff to bring more work in the door, but only 20% want to come back, as I said. So meeting new prospects and people is not going to help the firm meet their budgets. He feels they need to take a bigger role. But in reality, many of them have technical skills but not the personality skills to engage in this type of networking, which they've never done. And he's not happy. So my question to you is, how do we make him happy? How do we handle that?
This poor guy is having to face a whole new construct in terms of business development. And, having that socialization aspect, which clearly energized him, that he so clearly enjoyed, having that taken away is hard. It's hard for lots of people, but it's harder for some people. So I would begin the conversation asking what kind of a toll this is taking on him personally first. And, my son, Sam, and he's my business partner. I know. Amazing. How did that happen? It's great. Anyway, Sam and I have been delivering a series of short virtual workshops on creativity and leadership, and specifically on helping leaders to let go of old ways of doing things and really leverage the cognitive diversity that they have within their teams. No, his team members may not have the skills or the desire to drum up business in the traditional way that he's done it in the past, but they will surely have some great creative ideas for ways to bring business in the door. So, I'd be interested to know more about these 65 employees. And I'd begin exploring with him the idea of a leader as a theater director and see if I can get him to look at the untapped talent that he can mobilize to identify new ways of engaging with clients. I think this will encourage a sense of ownership for successful outcomes within his team, and it will give him a role that I think he can embody and embrace. Of course, a benefit of his repositioning himself as a director means that he doesn't have to come up with all the answers, which is wonderful. I mean, theater directors, they have the vision, they know where they want the actors to go and what creative direction they want the play to take. But when you walk into rehearsal, you need to let go of all those ideas and really just create safe space for the talent that you've got to come up with solutions and solve problems for you. So it's about knowing when to take your hands off. There's like I always talk about it. I have like a thing called a director's wheel. And I think that there are like three different gears that you're in. There's the facilitative gear where you're asking questions of your team. There's the consultative gear where you're giving them guidance. And there's the directive gear where you're actually telling them what you want them to do. I encourage the people that I coach to be conscious of which gear they're in and decide when they need to switch gears. So I think that might be a helpful thing for him in empowering his team and letting go of the reins a little bit. Look, finally the thing is, this loss of social interaction, for extreme extroverts who are so energized, not just by conversation, a Zoom thing doesn't really push all the buttons for them, because true extroverts are stimulated by all of the noise and smell and sensory stimulation that comes from being around people. So, I think he's probably grieving that a little bit. And beyond the loss of the business to business. Oh, sorry about that, Ricky. I think beyond the impact on his business, I think it's also probably taking a toll on him personally. So I'd want to see if he's experiencing any depression or anxiety. Just ask him a few questions about that, and ask if he has a qualified therapist, if that is something that's difficult for him, that he can turn to. And that is where I take my hands off and hand over to someone who's qualified to support my client. So, that's pretty much how I'd handle it, Ricky.
What I'm hearing here is some really interesting points that I hadn't considered before, and that's why I love this conversation, because the first thing that jumped out to me is the fact that we've got to give people time to reskill and find their passion again, which he had found, and maybe now he's got to let his people find their passion, and it mightn't happen overnight. But the takeaways that I think I'm going to refer back to post this session is about how we as coaches and leaders have to be more agile in their ability to let go of what's not working in order to grasp a better solution. And this is an important part of coaching and learning. That agility piece, and we can never underestimate it. Also, letting teams have their space to co-create new solutions together, which encourages ownership. So the way he rainmaked was not going to be the same way they may, and we've just got to shift all of those things. So that really jumped out at me as a key takeaway, and acknowledging space around that. But what I too identified with the piece about extroverts, it's not just because they like people, it's what comes with it and their need to be involved. And it's equally as important to do that as it is to grieve not doing that. And we can't expect people just to get over it and do things differently. It's not quite as simple. So those are the three things that really jumped out of for me in guiding others, but for me as a coach, learning when to take my hands off is a key one, because too often, as they say, we sort of fall in love with our clients and want to stay around for a lot longer. Fall in love metaphorically, of course, maybe, but here's the thing: it's that we have to stand back sometimes, and let people. And
Ricky, I think that bit is specific to if somebody is as a result of grieving the loss of that interaction, if they are experiencing anxiety or depression. That's the kind of like, nope, got to take my hand off here, right?
Yeah. Correct, very much, and knowing that is more important than the skills that we can give them in other ways. So that's how to handle it, basically. I hope that's helpful.
We handle it anyway. We share our experiences of working with leaders as a way to learn from each other, don't we, Ricky? I mean, our approaches are different, right?
Very much, and that's the beauty of being able to have open conversations where you're not precious to get support and advice back to us to continually improve our work as coaches.
We've had great success with our respective approaches, but this is not intended to be advice. We encourage you to resolve the challenges that you face in the workplace in whatever way that feels effective and authentic for you. Hey, join in the conversation. There's always a comment box somewhere that we're going to be putting this, and we would love to hear from you. We serve by sharing, and Ricky, I learned so much by listening to you.
Likewise. We look forward to listening to you and hearing you all as well in your comments. So thank you.